Next month, New South Wales voters will go to the polls to decide whether the Perrottet government should be returned. And coincidentally, guess what popped up on the ABC's Four Corners on Monday? Here's journalist Louise Milligan.
In this episode of Four Corners, inside the secret world of the schools and study centres connected to Opus Dei, the conservative Catholic organisation with links to the powerful. At the end of each academic year, a graduating group of schoolgirls gathers in identical white gowns.
The whiteness, it's about virginity, it's about chastity.
These schools follow the principles of Opus Dei. New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet has spent his entire life in this Sydney school community. It's nurtured his political ascendancy.
So smear by association, just in case you were wondering. And not just the Premier, but also his parents and his siblings.
Premier Perrottet is one of a family of 12 children, and his siblings attended Redfield and Tangara. Mr Perrottet's parents are married members of Opus Dei, known as supernumeraries.
Milligan spoke to former students who attended these schools and study centres, and admittedly, some of them described practices that were bizarre. For example, that students were being taught that viewing pornography would result in holes in their brains.
We did a Google search, just a basic Google search. It became clear that the image is actually showing what parts of your brain are active while viewing pornography.
Isabella's mother was so concerned, she requested a meeting at the school.
We were essentially told that truth and fact is secondary to, your ethos. And
in a school,
yeah.
But what does that have to do with Perrottet, other than the fact he was a former student who left over 20 years ago? And if you thought that was tenuous, just listen to this loaded question from Milligan.
We don't know what Dominic Perrottet knows about what's being taught at Tangara. But if he does know, what does it say?
So basically, Milligan has absolutely no evidence that Perrottet knows what's being taught at the school, but throws a hypothetical that he does know. It's pretty disgraceful. And yet the ABC's official position, as reported last week, is that, quote, there is nothing in the program that is an attack on the Catholic faith. To be clear, I don't have any issue with the ABC exposing archaic practices or abuse of curriculums at schools, whether religious or otherwise. But for the national broadcaster, it is being remarkably selective about which faith it continually singles out, that being Christianity, especially Catholicism. As we showed you, Milligan called out Catholic schools for enforcing a dress code on women to signify purity. Now ask yourself, when was the last time Four Corners looked at the equivalent of a non-Christian religious school? Let's have a look at some of the stories the Australian has reported over the last few years which were missing from the Four Corners report. There's plenty of material there for Four Corners, but no, the ABC loves nothing better than attacking a conservative Christian leader. It's something that Dominic Perrottet knows only too well. Remember this ludicrous coverage from the ABC we showed you when he became Premier?
He's been variously described as an economic rationalist, social conservative, a religious hardliner. Is he a very conservative religious person, the Dominic Perrottet you know? Is he better Catholic than you are, or is he a different... or is he an ultra-conservative? I mean, what's the difference?
Some commentators believe those strong religious views will be a turn-off for many voters.
It is a problem. It is a problem for women, LGBTQI people, and anyone of a different faith. So I'm concerned. I think a lot of women will be.
You're a conservative Christian man with traditional views. What about all those people who don't share those views? How are you going to connect to them?
Well, Michelle, keen to get your thoughts. I thought there was actually some really good moments of journalism in that show,
Yes.
Particularly exposing, whipping and all that bizarre stuff. I thought it really hurt themselves by attempting to link everything to Dominic Perrottet in a very tenuous manner.
Yeah, I was going to say that exactly. Tenuous link to Dominic Perrottet. And, you know, kind of as we're moving into an election, it's all a bit conspicuous to me. But I do think, you know, Perrottet, I'm a New South Wales resident. He is my Premier. I do not like Catholicism. I'm going to throw it out there. I'm not a fan of the Catholic Church. But beside that, I've never seen this Premier have any hardline stance, be exceptionally conservative. I've never seen him push his viewpoints onto anyone else. All he's done is lead and get things done. Like, I don't understand where this whole hardline conservative stance has come from. Like, I really don't understand why this narrative is consistently being pushed.
Yeah, it seems to be the left now that wants to conflate your religious credentials with your political and professional credentials, really.
But, like, if anyone was asked what their religious credentials at the ABC were, I can guarantee you that they would be shown the door.
Yeah.
Because you're not allowed to ask that.
And it shouldn't even be relevant.
No.
Sophie, what are your thoughts?
I thought the link to Dominic Perrottet was pretty flimsy there, Jack. And he did say in a Sky News interview this week that no complaints were made to the Independent Authority or Education Minister, which I thought was interesting. It was a weak link, I thought. As Michelle puts it quite succinctly, it was also very timely to link it to Dominic Perrottet, given he's really fighting for his life at this election. So I thought it was a pretty weak link, but a perfect hit for Four Corners, given their history on attacking conservative Liberal leaders.
And Sophie, before we go, I want to get your thoughts on this scandal around this cartoon in The Age, which they have completely pulled back. They've self-censored themselves. Can you give us a bit of an update?
Sure, Jack. So The Age ran this cartoon with a very good opinion piece on Sunday, which spoke from the arts editor who wanted to review a play about black women. However, she was told by organisers that only a person of colour would be allowed to review the play. And she said this was basically not right. It shouldn't come down to your race as to whether or not you can review a play. So The Age ran this cartoon, which is on screen now. It caused significant uproar on social media. And consequently, The Age editor, in his first day on the job, he's just started this week, he apologised profusely for the cartoon and they pulled it down in all their records, and it's also removed from the State Library of Victoria because they upset various social groups. I thought this was a weak move by The Age. Given that they're just bowing to criticism, it raises the question also, how do cartoonists successfully draw people of colour without upsetting certain groups of society?
Yeah, particularly when it pertains directly to the story about people being segregated by their race and not able to be the critics. It was the whole point of the story. I found it quite cowardly, the back down